Hi there, folks. Welcome to another Thin Scale Live with Giuseppe and I. We have had a lot of discussion lately around VDI. See a lot of VDI in the news on LinkedIn. So we thought, why not do our next session on VDI and the look beyond VDI and what it looks like in the hybrid workforce. So today's agenda looks a little bit like this. Why do organizations use VDI is what we're firstly going to discuss, because there's a lot of history behind that, and some folks listening today might not understand even why their organization uses VDI. Secondly, then we're going to look at, can organizations replace that VDI? There's a lot of speculation out there whether certain solutions can or can't replace the VDI. And then we're also going to have a little look at how we can enhance VDI deployments in today's world. Then we'll open up to Q&A, but feel free. This is interactive, guys. So if you have any questions at any point, just feel free to ping them. If you can get in the way of Giuseppe, giving his talk to us as well, and interrupt him, we'll be sure to answer them as we go. So Pep, I think let's get started, and let's start into why do organizations use VDI for the folks listening at home.
Good morning or good afternoon. Here we go again. We're still here, Lauren. Another podcast. Yeah. Why do organizations use a VDI? Look, this is a Pandora box, right? There are different reasons, different use cases associated with a VDI. But
sure,
if we look broadly or if we look macros, for me, I've been in the financial institution before joining TeamScale, and I was very surprised that in 3 days I had a desktop up and running. I worked in the second floor on a Monday. Sometimes I had to jump on the fourth and the fifth floor to help the guys because I was still in support in the bank, right?
Yeah.
And the desktop just followed me around. It doesn't matter the laptop, doesn't matter at the time the Dell team client, right? So organization obviously it is not as simple as it was before back in the days where I used to work for the bank, but the simplicity of just typing my username and password and whatever app I had open in one session, it just followed me around. So those roaming profile security is another reason. I can argue that because obviously I was saving everything in the VDI, data never left the server or the desktop or the Windows back in the day. So there was that assumption that everything that was controlled as manageable. Patches is another. Obviously, that the team back in the days, the VDI team, or what we call the Edge team, was just, sending down patches every time, a Citrix patch, a VMware patch. So it was easy. It was very easy and very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very appealable to use a VDI, although with a cost associated with it. But another example, and I lived it privately here, so people might not know my wife, and I don't know how she got to marry me. She's a doctor, and doesn't matter. She changed in Ireland. She changed maybe 15 hospitals. Every single one of them was using a VDI.
Sure.
There are a couple of reasons. We can argue legacy app is the main one, because obviously, especially in Ireland, hospitals don't have the budget to keep, obviously, the IT up to date, but they have apps that cannot be virtualized, that cannot be moved to Windows 10 or now Windows 11. And they were using Citrix. Data is another reason. They have patients' data. They don't want that data to be exposed. And we know we got attacked a couple of times in Ireland. So having that mindset of, I need to look at Giuseppe history, Giuseppe patient history. I need that data to be protected, GDPR, you know yourself. So the benefit of the VDI was, she changed job. The system were different, but the VDI more or less was the same. She kept using Citrix. And even here now, the first thing she saw was a Citrix VDI. I see, especially here in Canada, I see a lot of what we call digital pathology. So she's a pathologist, and she can look at slides at home, but always within the VDI itself. And it was very, very surprising to say, okay, so the VDI, even on HSC, or a medical environment, the VDI is still mostly used. So there are benefits of why. I can argue, especially when the example of a company buys another company, just because company A was using a VDI 10, 15 years ago, do we still have the value of having a VDI? Of the work is different, right? The work we did 10 years ago is different from the work we do today. The way we access an application or a desktop is different from the way we access an app on a desktop 10 years ago. So do we still have the value proposition of spending tens and tens of dollars a month for a VDI if the user workload changed? So there are a lot of obviously different way of looking at why a VDI is used in a company, but we need to go a little bit deeper. Like, do you access desktop? Do you access apps? Do you access a mix of both, or do you access websites? So
for sure.
obviously we need to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and I think just on your point as well of the legacy apps, I see it all the time. And back in my Microsoft days when I worked there, and I would still catch up with some of the guys 12 years later in my career, and I'm still catching up with them. And particularly public sector businesses are still using the same applications. They have made some tweaks, but they're still what I would regard as Windows 95 type applications, but they're fit for purpose, they serve a purpose, and they need a VDI to connect into them. So I think particularly in those type of sectors, it is certainly very holistic to keep your VDI there.
Yeah, you need to think about a lot of, updating an app that worked for 20 years and it's serving hundreds of thousands of people is not an easy decision to make. Even the best CTO in the world would argue, I don't think we can touch this. We're gonna break a lot of usage. So that is a perfect, use case.
Yeah.
We cannot virtualize or we cannot upgrade that application for Windows 10 or 11. We need to use the VDI. Problem is, just because one app is using the VDI, I don't think you need to use the VDI as a whole in your environment. If you have different LOBs, if you have different use case, and you have 500 users, and maybe 100 are using this application or that application, I can argue you could do 100 on the VDI and the other 400 somewhere else, so you can lower the cost of the VDI. You can use obviously a VDI hosted by a different provider. Like, you don't have to have. I remember, like in the basement in the AV bank, we had the servers in the basement, so you don't have to spend money for the hardware. Can you host your VDI to Citrix Cloud, AVD, Microsoft, VMware, RAS Parallel is another player that they're doing an amazing job. So look around. I'm not saying don't use the VDI. I'm saying think closely about the cost and the way you use the VDI. Which obviously brings to the other question, like, can we replace a VDI? Right? I'm assuming you're going to ask me that because we have in the agenda.
Let's just waiting
for you. I've been there, and you know it. We have been there as a team. We have obviously asked Pep, this is my use case. I have a VDI. Can we replace it? You can and you can't. We have tried. We have succeeded, but we also have failed. And for me, just going there, come to us as a company, come to us because we can replace the VDI. It's not as simple as it looks, based on obviously the observation we did prior. It depends on your work. Just because you don't want to spend the money doesn't mean you can replace the VDI straight away. Think about hospital. I cannot simply justify, say, I'm going to buy a laptop and all your records for your patient are stored on OneDrive or SharePoint or on a corporate PC. It's still a security gap there. There is still a factor where you need to protect that data. So yes, you can replace a VDI if the work you do in the VDI can be moved locally or to a laptop or somewhere else. If you're accessing 30 websites, I can argue you don't need a VDI. You need a secure endpoint, you need a corporate machine, and then it's offset the cost of the VDI. If you need a desktop, then you need to find another alternative of that desktop. If you're using just apps, I can argue that we can replace a VDI, we move everything locally, we protect the application, we protect how we access this application, think VPN, think other vendor out there, right? Then yes, you can replace a VDI. But if your work was done in a way that the VDI is paramount, you can't change a VDI.
Sure.
Cost is one, resource is another one, security is another option. But mostly, if I keep referring to a CTO or a CEO. If the CTO 5-10 years ago decided to go to a VDI, and you're keeping using the VDI for the last 10 years, you can't just replace the VDI from a Monday to Friday. You can try, you start obviously the journey, you assess what you can remove or what you cannot, and then you say, yes, we can replace the VDI, but that journey can take up of 1 year, 2 years. Right? It's not an easy yes or no answer for me. Perhaps obviously the folks here in the lobby can prove me wrong, but I've been there, I've tried, and it's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah. I think from my standpoint, I look at it in 3 ways of conversations that we would have with folks. One, there's a lot of people that come to us and they might be small organizations and they think they need a VDI and they might not actually need a VDI in terms of what they're doing. So that's one thing that we often see. And I would say if you're unsure, reach out to an organization like ourselves. We can certainly support that. 2 are then those more longer established businesses that have been using a VDI for a long time. And we had one recently actually that was a hospital, actually in Canada, if you recall. And they had come and said, like, we have 2 legacy apps that we absolutely need to keep in our VDI, but we want to see if, from a cost perspective, everything else outside that, but we need something to conclave everything in a shell. So in a fast pace, obviously healthcare environment, we want to make sure that people aren't having to dib in and out, that it's all on the one screen for folks. So we see that happening. And then we see on the other side of, I was speaking to a very large insurance company recently in the United States, and their plan is ultimately to remove and go off VDI, but it's a 5-year plan that they have in place because they nearly 50,000 people, all in with vendors working for them. So those things in itself. So we see a lot of mixtures in those in terms of things. But I think if you're ever unsure, I think just speak to somebody much like Giuseppe, in terms of having a consultative chat on that. I think like the next thing I suppose is those that have VDI, and I always said it's no longer enough, and people often hear us saying that, but what does that actually mean? I think now might be a good time just to give you a little breather. Our CTO Dave recently did a really good tech blueprint on key logging. And we'll talk about that afterwards, but maybe let's skip to the video in terms of what does that look like in terms of, does the VDI protect you from key logging? Well, let's find out. If we can switch over to the video with Dave.
She started building in protections into their clients. Omnissa have done the same. So if we jump over here to security, we can see that they have actually built in a keylogger blocking feature. I'll go ahead and turn that on. Do need to restart the client, so we'll go ahead and do that. And once again, we'll just connect through. So we'll use demo user again and our super secure password. So now if we look at our standard keylogger, so again, we can see it was capturing the keystrokes, but this is that protection kicking in now. The protection is actually obfuscated all the keys that I've pressed, so obviously not in plain text anymore, so that's great, that's working really well. But down here again in our advanced keylogger, we can see that it's still able to capture the credentials that I typed in plain text there. And then we'll do the same, we'll connect back to our desktop. Still capturing. Again, as before, the standard keylogger wasn't able to capture anything that I've typed into the desktop window here, but the advanced keylogger, even with that keylogging protection turned on in the client, I'm still able to capture in plain text everything that I'm typing into that VDI. So there we go, it's just a quick demonstration. As you can see, I mean, obviously I'm intentionally trying to capture these keystrokes. I've manually installed these keyloggers on my desktop here. I've manually launched them, but what if I was an unsuspecting user? Imagine I'd been infected by a keylogger and I didn't even know, and it doesn't have to have a UI, it could just be sat there in the background, silently capturing everything that I'm typing and therefore typing into my VDI. even worse, that keylogger might actually be sending every keystroke you're typing off to some server on the other side of the world somewhere.
Yeah, I think that video really sums it up and is always quite powerful. There's nothing you and I can say all day long. Screen scrapers, malware injections, keyloggers, all those things are not protected in a VDI. So anybody that's using a VDI and absolutely wants to keep it, which we see a lot, how can you now in today's world enhance that, Pep?
Good question. I wish I would come up with that video. Well done, Dave. I can't complain about that. Look, the way I say it, we are not saying you don't use a VDI. For me, the VDI, if you still have a need, is the place to go. And we can argue if everybody would replace a VDI, then all the big players would be going out of business. We need those players there because the VDI is still a powerful tool. And I don't want anybody to replace it if they really need it. What I'm saying here is trust the PC or trust the user that connects to that VDI. Because I can argue, if I know my storefront NetScaler URL and the company provides me with a corporate machine, I have a laptop on the shelf here. What stops me to install the security workspace on my not corporate machine, install the VPN? Yes, they have conditional access checks. You can do a lot of things to check if the machine is yours, but doesn't stop me from installing the security workspace, the Omnissa client, the remote desktop, and still connect to the VDI from what I call an untrusted device. What I'm saying is trust the VDI if you're connected from a trusted device. And people that I hear, I suppose, they already know what to do with Secure Remote Worker, they already know what we do with Team Kiosk. Maybe they know or they don't know what we have for the VDI protection, which is the TeamScale VDA, which is the virtual desktop agent. Right? A little agent sits in your broker, I don't know if you know this one, Lauren, and monitors where the user connecting to the VDI is coming from, or the actual device that the user used to connect to the VDI is coming from. If the VDA detects that the session is coming from an untrusted device, we can block the user from connecting to the VDI. We don't want people using a VDI if the device is untrusted. So we can stop the logging, and that could be Citrix, VMware, or Omnissa, AVD, upstream from AWS and Amazon Workspace. So we have, and RAS parallel. So we have a full support of all the major players out there for the VDI. What I'm saying is trust the device and trust the user, because yes, I can send corporate machine, I can use a VPN, I can do every single checkbox, tick from a security standpoint, so the CISO is happy. Especially if you have a hybrid workforce. We have people in the office, grant. I control the machine, I control even the scan and the badge to enter the office has to be me, right? I know Pep is Pep in the office. I don't know Pep is Pep at home. How do I control that? How do we block people from even me? Say, I don't want to work today, I'm going to give Pep user credential to my sister, right? I need to make sure that my sister PC is protected and my VDI access is trusted. How do we do it? We go with it. Look, there are other competitors out there that can do the same. We are not saying go to TeamScale and buy TeamScale because we are the best. Just I'm saying if you're using a VDI, make sure the device is trusted. Make sure the device meets your compliance in order to access the VDI. And the VDA is there for you guys. And you can test it, you can send me an email, you can ping me on LinkedIn, I can show you exactly how we do it. We can do it based on, obviously we have geolocation now, so Laura likes to go to Portugal on holiday, but she never stops working. So she connects the VPN because we have conditional access in our Entra, mimic that she's in Ireland. Lauren will be stopped because between the VDA and the Secure Remote Worker and geolocation access policy, we can stop user from working on a region that is not accepted from the administrator. So it's the combination of our suite that can give you, for me, the best, obviously, security mindset we have. We can cover everything from in your stack. If you think about Lauren, we can start from the talent acquisition with the validation tool. We can do the
Sure.
thin client compression with thin kiosk. We can bring your own device or work from home with secure remote worker. The missing piece was the VDI and now the contextual check with the VDA. If you have those pieces together like a puzzle, I can assure you your stack will be secured, no matter where you are, no matter how you access a VDI or not a VDI ecosystem.
Yeah, for sure. I would say about 20% of the prospects that we talk to and our customers are solely use us just to protect their VDI. It's quite common, we have a lot of government bodies across Europe that do that as well at great scales, even within the office themselves. So there's lots of different use cases as well that I think over the past few years, people have regarded us as the BYOD guys. And then when we do something like this, all of a sudden we get some new leads coming in as well, not understanding that we've a lot more in terms of our stack, in terms of what we can do. And also, making sure that people start questioning themselves and going, we are using a VDI, but what are we doing in terms of everything else in relation to that VDI? Because how are you protecting the endpoints connected into that VDI, particularly in a very flexible workforce? I have a lot of friends that even if they're working in the office, they're bringing the laptop home. So what happens when they're bringing the laptop home? And then they're...
And look, sometimes the problem is not even the company, because the company are having all the pieces together, that they have all the tools to make sure that the access is secure. But back to Dave's video, I click, with an iPhone 17, you click, you download something, right? That you don't even know that is running in the background with secure remote worker or thin kiosk because of the zero trust approach. I know the device is protected, is trusted. Now, how do I make sure that even the VDI access is trusted? So that's what I'm saying is all the pieces together will achieve, for me, the best security environment.
Yeah. Sounds good. If there's any questions, folk, feel free to put them in the chat as you do that. And if we receive any, just in the meantime, what we can do as well, we'll also post the link to the full webinar that Dave had around keylogging for anybody that's interested in looking at that. Also, feel free to reach out to sales@thinscale.com as well if you have any questions in relation to this, and I can certainly connect the dots in with Giuseppe if you want to have a deep dive conversation, whether that's in relation to VDI or our VDA often comes up as a conversation nowadays as well in terms of the protection. Pep, I'm conscious of time, and I know we both love to talk. What would you say are the key takeaways from your perspective that you want the folks listening to take away from today?
Use a VDI if you need to. Try to reduce the cost of the VDI if you don't have to do everything on the VDI. Secure the endpoint and make sure that the access to the VDI it's segregated, it's restricted, it's secure. I'm not in any way downplaying the role of the VDI. I use the VDI every day, although just for demos and testing, but the VDI is still, for me, one of the best tool out there. It's costly. We know it's costly, but if you really have to use the VDI, make sure you use it at the full potential. Especially on a multi-session VDI, try to squeeze as many users as possible so your cost is lower. If you don't use the VDI fully, why do you need a desktop? Can you perhaps just publish an application or a remote app? Look around you. Maybe a vendor is better than the other in terms of cost. A VDI is a VDI, desktop is a desktop, wherever it's inside, as long as it's a Windows 10, Windows 11, every VDI players can do exactly the same thing. So look around, don't just stick with one vendor just because you've been using the vendor for the last 5-10 years. There are a lot of smaller players that do a really good job. I'm biased, so I would say go to ThinkScan to secure your endpoint. For me, it's purely think about the ecosystem, think about your stack. Are you protecting everything just then? Oh no, my VDI is secure. I need to only lock down my VDI. I know the VDI is secure. You can test policy, security policy, everything within the VDI. I know it's manageable. It's what happens outside the VDI where you don't have access to it.
Yeah, very good. I think for me, the key takeaways that I would have just from what you've discussed there today are really if you're using a VDI now, take some time out and reflect what you're using it for. Can elements there be saved in terms of a cost perspective? And then also have a look at how are you securing your endpoints. And if you are not securing the endpoints, then ask yourself why, because you're obviously running a ton of vulnerabilities there. I think that's probably my key takeaways from your conversation today, Pep. So very much appreciated, as always, for another Pep Talk, as we'll now start rebranding this.
Can we use Pep Talk? I don't think we can use Pep Talk.
We'll see.
Already done.
Yeah, let's not get ourselves into any trouble. So feel free, folks, if there's anything as well in terms of the next series you want Pep and I to have a little look at in our next webinar, feel free to send over any suggestions as well, and we'll see if we can tackle those. Thanks a million for listening, folks, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Bye. Bye.